The Treasury Secretary says the U.S. will keep tariffs on Chinese goods in place for now. Senator Cotton calls for targeted decoupling with Communist China, saying the U.S. is once again at a crossroads of her destiny. Washington has an ace up its sleeve that could be used against Beijing. Without it, Chinese airplanes can't fly. The lab in Wuhan at the center of the pandemic controversy receives funds from American taxpayers. It's set to continue until 2024. And a Chinese professor is found to live in the U.S., even though he's known for making anti-American remarks. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. A comment from the Treasury Secretary could mean big news for China tariffs. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen says the U.S. will keep tariffs on Chinese goods in place for now. But she also asked the new administration would evaluate what they, quote, think is appropriate going forward. Yellen says the administration is reviewing the U.S. approach to China and that there are a range of issues where they're seeing unfair practices, like forced technology transfers and giving subsidies to high-tech industries. She noted the administration wants to hold China to its international obligations in these areas. Former President Trump imposed tariffs on Chinese goods in 2018. Trump did so to pressure Beijing to narrow the trade deficit between the two countries. The trade deficit means the U.S. buys more goods from China than China buys from the U.S. In 2018, the U.S. had an over $400 billion trade deficit with China. That number dropped to over $300 billion last year. Republican Senator Tom Cotton is arguing for targeted decoupling with Communist China in a recent report. Launching the report at the Ronald Reagan Institute this Thursday, Senator Cotton says, quote, the costs of targeted decoupling with China pale in comparison to the cost of passivity. We cannot watch as America becomes less prosperous and cedes its position to a totalitarian power dedicated to bending the world to its will. Americans must act decisively to avoid this fate. Citing President Reagan's "the time for choosing," the senator says the United States is once again at a crossroads of her destiny. Cotton lists in his report many key areas for targeted decoupling from China. These include trade, rare earths, semiconductors, telecommunications, medical devices, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, higher education, and entertainment. He says, quote, we must identify and disentangle strategically important economic sectors while thwarting China's parasitic approach to global trade and commerce. Cotton also urges that America restore secure and scalable domestic productive capacity in strategic areas. With the technology dominance, the U.S. has cards it can play in its relationship with China. And one of these cards is airplanes. NTD's Juliet Song and an aviation expert have the details.
With the ongoing tension between China and the U.S., one expert is reminding Washington that it has a potential winning card, aviation technologies. That's because without American technology, Chinese airplanes can't fly.
Right now, other than the structure of the aircraft, that is to say, the skins, the skeleton, everything like that, about 100% is imported or built in cooperation with U.S. and Western manufacturers.
Abulafia says for an aircraft, the engines are all the muscles, and electronics controlling the plane is the brain.
And all of these are basically Western designs, and in the case of the engines, outright imports from the U.S.
He says it would be hard for China to create its own substitute.
Recreating a Chinese engine would take so many years and billions of dollars.
Beijing has been trying to catch up for decades, but making an airplane is no simple matter. Right now, China can build the shell of the airplane, but when it comes to all the technologies that make it fly,
that is all still imported or built with a great deal of assistance and U.S. or Western design. So in other words, the answer has been a lot slower than hoped for, and all of the progress that has been made has only been made with big imported programs.
He adds all jetliners in the world are built globally, and it would be virtually impossible for a country to build an airplane on its own.
If you could do it, you'd be guaranteed of a rather bad aircraft, because an aircraft designer needs to be able to shop everywhere for the best technologies. So could China do it? Yes, probably in about 10 or 15 years with billions of dollars spent, and they would have a very bad aircraft as a consequence of that.
And right now, the Biden administration has the card in its hands. That's because last December, the Trump administration issued an order that makes it very difficult for U.S. companies to export aviation technologies to almost 60 Chinese companies. It remains to be seen if the Biden administration will keep the order in place. Juliet Song, NTD News.
The Chinese lab at the center of the CCP virus pandemic controversy is now eligible to receive taxpayer funding for animal research until 2024. The lab is widely viewed as the source of the CCP virus outbreak. The Wuhan Institute of Virology studies coronaviruses in bats. Many suspect an accidental lab leak is responsible for the virus infecting humans and leading to the current pandemic. U.S. taxpayer money partially funded that project. The National Institute of Health told the Daily Caller News Foundation about the funding issue. The Wuhan lab got the money through American nonprofit organization EcoHealth Alliance. The National Institute of Health told EcoHealth that the bat project could receive the funds until 2024. That means the Wuhan lab could still be carrying out the same kind of bat-based experiments. A German scientist suggests the CCP virus came from the Wuhan lab. He says he's 99.9% sure. He's not a virology expert, but a physicist from the University of Hamburg. He admitted to German media that he has no scientific basis, but plenty of what he called circumstantial evidence, suggesting a lab leak is the most likely explanation. He suggests that the virus did not pass from animals to humans. Roland Wiesenanger published a 100-page paper supporting his claim. As for his main points, first, no animal host has been found so far, despite thorough research. Beijing claims bats are the source of the virus. If this were true, it would still require another intermediary animal host between bats and humans, something that has not yet been found. Secondly, it's not the first time safety concerns have been raised about the Wuhan lab before China's initial outbreak. That's coupled with claims that scientists working inside the lab were among the first to be infected with the CCP virus. Lastly, researchers in the lab were researching how viruses become more contagious to humans and how to make them more contagious. Wiesendanger says the circumstantial evidence shows a leak would have been possible. His research has been slammed by other scientists as unscientific. Wiesendanger released his paper just 10 days after the team of World Health Organization experts concluded their 2-week visit to Wuhan. It was part of a probe into the origins of the virus, 1 year after the pandemic first broke out in the city. The team has dismissed lab leak theories. They visited the facility and spent 3 hours there during the trip. The World Health Organization's expert investigation team has finished touring Wuhan, but some of the team members' China ties are still garnering public attention. Australia-based Sky News reported earlier this week that Peter Van Emberick, the head of the WHO-led team, received a Scientific Spirit Award in China back in 2017. It was issued by the China Food Science Association and International Food Science Alliance. Another expert on the team, Peter Daszak, also worked on long-term scientific cooperation with Chinese virologist Shizhen Li. That's according to a tweet Daszak posted in 2018. Shizhen Li leads the Wuhan virus lab at the center of the pandemic origin controversy. She is known as China's Batwoman for her work on coronaviruses native to the animal. Her team studies some of the world's most dangerous pathogens. Daszak had previously defended her against allegations of lab leaks. According to a Wall Street Journal column, his nonprofit organization has allocated more than $100 million in U.S. federal grants to fund overseas lab experiments, including in the Wuhan lab. Dutch virologist Marion Koopmans is the third WHO expert with known China ties. She serves as a consultant to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in China's Guangdong province. Koopmans responded on social media, saying she has or is working for America and Europe too, suggesting there's no conflict of interest in her working for foreign nations. Electric car maker Tesla is having a tough time in communist China. We spoke to experts to figure out why the Chinese regime is going after the company. NTD's Chen Han has more on that.
The Chinese regime appears to be going after electric car maker Tesla. 3 weeks into February, the company has been through a series of setbacks. 5 Chinese regulators summoned Tesla over quality issues. Chinese media also ramped up coverage of consumer complaints, and the company is recalling over 30,000 vehicles that have quality issues.
The Chinese regime is concerned about the survival of other electric car makers.
The Chinese regime approved Tesla's request to open a plant in Shanghai in 2018. At the time, local authorities provided favorable conditions, including low-interest loans and cheap lands. Tesla became the first Western car maker that fully owns a plant in China. But experts say there's also a favorable condition for the Chinese regime. The regime wants to use Tesla to develop other industries that are closely related to car making.
The regime's goal wasn't to just let Tesla sell cars in China. The auto industry supports a chain of secondary industries, and the Chinese regime's goal is to have the secondary industries take root in China. But the regime also doesn't want the company to grow so fast that other competitors are facing a dead end.
Tesla has been growing fast in China, perhaps a bit too fast for Beijing. In 2020, Tesla's sales in China hit over $6 billion. That's more than double the figure from the previous year. Tesla says it would strengthen self-inspection and internal management after being summoned. It remains to be seen what the future holds for the car maker in one of its biggest overseas markets. Chen Han, NTD News.
A social media post shocks Chinese netizens. It comes after extreme winter weather conditions in Texas accidentally exposed a longtime anti-American fighter who had secretly settled in the U.S. It's not Chinese Professor Chen Ping's first time in the spotlight. Last year, a video of a speech he made went viral. It compared differences between the U.S. and China and triggered a heated online debate.
If you make an income of 2,000 yuan per month in China, which is less than 1,000 US dollars, you'll be far happier than those who have 3,000 US dollars per month in the US. The people in the US are now living in very miserable conditions.
He actually made a conversion mistake in his comments. 2,000 Chinese yuan is equal to less than 300 US dollars. So he was really saying with the equivalent of less than $300 a month. Chinese people can have a better life than Americans who make $3,000 a month. He also gave his opinion on why living in America is miserable.
There are no subway systems in the US, so what can you do? Drive a car, but it costs so much money to drive a car. There's also insurance. It all adds up, so the US is in dire misery.
Chen is a part-time economics professor at 2 renowned Chinese universities. He also has ties to the U.S. He got his doctorate from the University of Texas at Austin in the 80s. And he works as a foreign researcher at Columbia University. His speech comparing the U.S. and China came as a surprise for many Chinese people. Some of them refuted Chen's claims with facts about driving costs and housing prices, as well as their own life experiences. But one of his latest tweets has put him back in the public eye. In the post, he explained he lives in Austin, Texas, and is suffering because of the state's rolling power outages brought on by the severe winter storm. One of them wrote, if Chen hates the United States so much, he should come back to China as soon as possible. A professor like him can get a few thousand yuan in China. Another said, quote, did Chen go to America to experience a miserable life? Isn't it far happier to make 2,000 yuan in China than it is making 3,000 US dollars in the US? Many netizens reprimanded the hypocrisy of encouraging Chinese patriotism while he lives abroad. They say Chen is a good example of how many famous anti-American figures operate. They make a living off anti-American ideals, but enjoy the country's privileges. U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says she's proud of the fact that the U.S. designated human rights abuses against the Uyghur ethnic minority in China as genocide. Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo made the designation at the end of his term. On Wednesday, she called it a strong statement for the people who've been detained and persecuted by the Chinese Communist Party.
And basically, what they tell us, the cruelest form of torture for them is when the Chinese authorities come in and say, nobody even knows you're here. They don't even remember why you're here and the rest. So that's why it's important for us to speak out so that those people know that they are not forgotten, even by name. In many cases, we have named them. And by the way, in a very bipartisan way.
Pelosi said speaking up for human rights is about honoring American values, adding she's been working with many Republican lawmakers over the issue, including Congressman Chris Smith and the retired Frank Wolf.
Just a whole long list of Republican members who have been excellent on human rights throughout the world.
Pelosi has been a vocal critic of Beijing's human rights abuses since the Tiananmen Square massacre in 1989. She's met with dissidents as well as pushed for resolutions condemning the CCP and bills supporting Hong Kong's pro-democracy movement. The House reintroduced a bill today to ban imports from China's Xinjiang region that have to be certified as not using forced labor to get around the ban. It would allow the president to sanction anyone responsible for labor trafficking of Uyghurs or other Muslims in Xinjiang, which is a leading producer of cotton and cotton products. The bill assumes goods from Xinjiang are made with forced labor unless there is clear and convincing evidence to the contrary. The bill has strong bipartisan support, but congressional aides say it faces pressure from lobbying firms with supply chain links to Xinjiang. London was never on Hong Konger Aragorn's wish list of places to visit, but now the 36-year-old is trying to build a new life in the British capital after fleeing a security clampdown in his birthplace.
London is one of the last places 36-year-old Aragorn ever thought he would visit. But now the Hong Konger and pro-democracy activist has been forced to build a new life in the British capital after he fled China's security crackdown on his home city.
Yeah, I can't say we are either betraying or not betraying the cause of fighting for our own rights and fighting for democracy. But I think you have to keep living. I mean, at least you have to stay alive for any cause.
Aragorn, who did not want to give his full name out of fear for his safety, is not alone. Nearly 5,000 Hong Kong citizens have already applied to live and work in Britain under a new visa scheme which affords Hong Kongers an expedited path to British citizenship. Britain launched the scheme for holders of a special British national overseas passport after Beijing imposed a sweeping national security law on Hong Kong. Activists say the law erodes the freedoms promised to the former British colony when it was returned to Chinese rule. But while the scheme makes it easier for Hong Kongers to emigrate to Britain, the struggle of settling into an unfamiliar place still remains.
I shouldn't be that optimistic, and that's why I start looking for waiter jobs or even kitchen assistant job in restaurants or bubble tea shop, store assistant or whatsoever.
The new visa scheme could bring over 300,000 Hong Kongers and their dependents to Britain in the next 5 years. Hong Kong residents who qualify for the scheme will be allowed to stay in Britain for 5 years and then apply for settled status and citizenship. In total, some 5.4 million Hong Kongers could ultimately be eligible.
How should Europe respond to the CCP's efforts to influence the continent via its own media operations? We spoke to 2 German lawmakers about it. NTD's Christian Watchin reports.
When UK regulator Ofcom banned Chinese state media CGTN 2 weeks ago, the channel lost its license in the UK, but that's not all. In Germany too, CGTN must stop broadcasting since its license is tied to the UK's. And here too, there's growing concern over its political control.
The channel is ultimately controlled by the Chinese Communist Party, and there are clear guidelines from the Chinese authorities. And you have to recognize that at the end of the day, for the CCP is all about propaganda.
But CGTN insists it's editorially independent from the party. Observers see the CCP intensifying its influence campaign via its media organizations worldwide, making use of the free speech tradition in the West.
Can the Chinese Communist Party say anything about the issues in Germany? Why not? Only then it should be clearly labeled and not camouflaged somehow. You have to say clearly that this is information or a PR program of the Chinese Communist Party.
In response to the UK move, 1 week later, the CCP banned BBC World News in China.
We have to make it more clear to the Chinese that there are limits. And I also firmly believe that if we do that, united in Europe, that we can then have an impact on China.
Before the ban, Ofcom had put CGTN on notice for broadcasting forced confessions, including of British national Peter Humphrey. The EU now has a Magnitsky-style mechanism for sanctioning individuals involved in human rights violations.
The official at the channel is often only executing orders, but we have to grab the people behind it, and they can often also be named. There now seems to be investigations, and we must hit them with sanctions.
The question remains, can Europe be united in its response to the CCP-influenced campaigns? Christian Wojcik, NTD News, Berlin.
It seems like the current administration is continuing the Trump administration's approach when it comes to countering Communist China in the Indo-Pacific region. For the first time since Biden took office, Secretary of State Antony Blinken met with leaders of the Quad Alliance in a virtual meeting on Thursday. The alliance includes the U.S., Australia, Japan, and India. Secretary Blinken discussed how the alliance can ensure a democratic Indo-Pacific region and counter the CCP's increasing aggression in the area. The Chinese regime's aggressive territorial claims in the South China Sea have been criticized internationally. Under then Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, the U.S. rejected Beijing's claims. Pompeo said, quote, Beijing's claims to offshore resources across most of the South China Sea are completely unlawful. The State Department says the Quad countries are committed to meeting at least once a year. And that's all for today's China in Focus. Thanks for watching and see you next time. Hi, we're happy to announce that you can also catch us on cable TV now. Millions of households already choose us as one of their trusted news sources, and you can too. You can watch us in Chicago, Washington, D.C., New York, and many other cities as well. And if your system doesn't carry NTD yet, you can just give them a quick call and request NTD on your cable provider. Thank you for watching. See you next time.